growing up. I was, for some whatever reasons, I was the shortest kid in school. I was the kid with a lot of acne. I remember they lined us up in junior high school, which was 7th, 8th, and 9th grade, was junior high school in Los Angeles. And they came into each classroom and they asked the shortest boys to line up against the wall. This is in the, I don't know, 1950 or something. And so I was one of the ones. And then they took the shortest one and they got all the shortest kids in each class to stand up, and I was the shortest of all. And lo and behold, they said, "You're Tiny Tim." That was the first play I was ever in, was Tiny Tim, just because of that fact. And I had I idolized this 9th grader, Bob Schwartz, and he, for some reason, was backstage doing something in the play, and Tiny Tim comes in at the end with a crutch. And all I do is I climb up on the table, and I say, "God bless us all, everyone," the crutch, and the curtain comes down. And the parents are there, and teachers and everything. It's the Christmas play. And Bob Schwartz dared me to say, "God bless us, everyone, God damn it." I did it. It was more important that Bob Schwartz respect me. And that was the first time I was ever kicked out of school. Working with Olivier was a great experience. He said something, it's not the first time I've said it, but we had dinner after we finished Marathon Men, and I said, "Lord, I says, I don't know if I'm ever when we're gonna see each other again, and I just have to ask you a question. I don't wanna interview you," but I was sitting right next to him and at dinner, and I said, "Well, what is it that makes us act?" You know, some people say, "Oh, I wanna give humanity my soul, and I knew when I was 5," and he kept saying every time I would say these things, he said, "Bollocks, bollocks, bollocks," which I guess is what their way of saying bullshit. And I said, "So what do you think it is?" And he put his face right up to mine like this. He stood next to me. He says, "You want to know what it is that makes us actors?" I said, "Yes." He says, "Look at me, look at me, look at me, look at me, look at me." And no one has ever said anything better. It's rare that I find actors, or I guess in general creative people, artists or painters, who have had what we call happy childhoods. But it's rare maybe to have a happy childhood. I love the term, I come from a dysfunctional family. I don't know what a functional family is, and I know they must exist. In retrospect, I know that I isolated myself internally because I remember vividly looking in a mirror. I had an older brother who went to fight in Korea, and he was almost 7 years older, and so I was the only kid in the house, and it was not a pleasant household. And I vividly remember looking in the mirror in the bathroom when I was a preteen, and realizing that I finally found the answer, and that was that I was an alien. And I believed, because this was the time of UFOs, flying saucers in the 50s, and I believed that I had been put on this earth as an alien from Mars. I'd been told at the time, "You're not going to know this, you're going to think you're a human being," but that somehow that part of their experiment failed. So I did know that I was really from Mars in human flesh. And of course, I went into therapy, and one of the things I learned, that it was a logical conclusion because I was an alien in that house, and it made sense. So that what I remember is always being on the peripheral of any experience growing up. When my parents fought, there was no talking in the house for days, and sometimes at the dinner table. I don't know where it came from, but I memorized the fighting, and I could imitate my father fairly well, who was a tough guy in the house, and I would imitate what he said in the fight. And this was a way of assuaging, I guess, or tempering. If I can get him to smile, maybe because he never said he was sorry about anything, we can get a little more relaxation in the house. And because he was a comic character in my mind, not even consciously. It was a very briefly. There's my brother and I, my mother, and he goes to work, and her job is to raise the kids. My brother and I are fighting, and sometimes we'd give my mother a rough time, and he'd come home, and once in a while, she didn't want to do it, but she'd tell Harry, my father, what happened, and he would come in, and he would raise hell. And he was always threatening us. And he was, sometimes he'd hit us with a belt, what everybody was saying. And my mother's standing there, if I hear one more time that you're not doing what your mother told, I'm going to take your head and smash, and I'm 6 years old, whatever, and smash, or 7, smash it against the wall till your brains splatter out. And I was like this, and if you don't respect your mother, and she finally would say, I will smash your brains against the wall. These very, great images. And she finally would say, all right, Harry, respect your mother. And my mother would say, Harry, that's enough. And he'd say, shut up. If you don't respect, I said, shut up. If you don't respect your mother. And I would tell the story 2-3 days later because somehow I knew. There's in the midst of all this chaos and terror, I didn't know it consciously, but it was something's wacky here. I just had that in me, and I guess that's the beginning of realizing how the comedy takes you further into the truth. That's the miracle. There has never been another you. There will never be another you. Ever. Ever. I don't care how much they look like you. You are completely, authentically, absolutely unique in the history of this human race. Now, we are all born that way. And somehow the extraordinary originality that we have gets ridiculed at a certain point. And we are suddenly asked to be like everyone else. We get laughed at in school early. Oh, I can't wear my hat that way. Everybody's wearing it sideways, or everywhere wearing it that way. Or my pants can't be here, they gotta be halfway down. In other words, there's this need to conform, interestingly enough, to the mass or to the cool kids in school. There is a ridiculing made of the individual. Oh my God, what a nerd, what a retard. I used to say, whatever, all here. The difference, the uniqueness of the individual is somehow thwarted. And as we get older, less and less and less and less of that retains. I didn't think about acting until I was in what we call junior college, because that's where you went if you didn't have grades to get into regular university. And I was failing the first year, and that meant I would have to go back and take the first year over again. And I just failed everything, always. And somebody said, take acting. And I said, why? I'm not interested in acting. They said, because it's 3 credits. And it's like gym, nobody flunks acting. The worst you can get is C- or something. That's the only reason I took the class, was for 3 credits. And I remember that we took, the teacher, Miss Sutcliffe, wore a hat, and she put these things in the hat where you would pick it and you would have a scene. And then someone else would be in the same scene, and I picked Glass Menagerie, and I was the gentleman caller, and there was some girl who picked Glass Menagerie, and she was Laura, and we were to do the famous gentleman caller scene from the Glass Menagerie. We would rehearse together and learn lines, and hours would go by, and we'd do it over and over again, and I was just like that. And I finished that year. I said, I heard about this place called the Pasadena Playhouse, and I wanted to go there, and somehow I talked my parents into sending me there, and that's where I met Gene Hackman, and we hung out together, and they kicked him out after 3 months and said he didn't have any talent. I feel that if I could do it again, I would want to be more in life the way I am in my work, to feel the same. And then you realize you're not alone when someone else puts it out there. And Mark Strand, who just died in his 80s and became a poet laureate in 1990, got the Pulitzer Prize, he said, and one of his collections is called Sleeping with One Eye Open, he said, in a field, I am the absence. A field. This is always the case. Wherever I am what's missing. If you get that, chances are you're in a creative field. In a field, I am the absence of field. This is always the case. Wherever I am what is missing. And if you understand that, I think as I do, it doesn't happen that way when we're working, because we are not what is missing. We are a part of the field.